Hi, and welcome back to C Programming Skills using Replit. I'm Norman McIntyre. Let's get started. Here we're going to look at main.c. We're going to go through this code and see what it does. So here we are in our project. This is from the previous video where we created the project, our initial project, and we made it say hello world. We actually clicked on run and it said hello world. We modified it where it said hello world in C. Now, the first skill we want to cover is notice the file extension of this file is .c. That is one of the skills to know, that when you see a .c file, that means it's a source code file of C code. In fact, from line 1 to 6, this is actual C code. It's often called source code. Your source code is what you, the software developer, focus on. Now, you can actually view this if I come over here to the console and I type the ls command. ls stands for list, shows me the list of files. By the way, here in the console, if I say uname, notice I'm on a Linux system. One of the very cool features of Replit.com is that you have a full Linux system here to run your code on. So you're running your code directly on a Linux system. And again, if I do ls, it says list the files. And we see I have 2 files there. Now, watch if I do this. If I say I'm going to remove, so rem says remove main. Okay, I've removed that file. In other words, when I do ls, I just have a main.c. By the way, as you're watching this, you should be following along within your browser window doing the same steps. That is, you can be executing the same commands, doing the same steps I'm doing. The thing I want you to observe here is our journey begins with a file that has a .c extension. In fact, there's a command called file, and I can say file main.c. And notice it says this is C source code. Is sometimes referred to as ASCII text. ASCII is American Standard Code for Information Interchange. It's just the character set that's used here for this code. But the more important thing right now is this is called C source code. And in fact, you as a software developer, this is where you're going to spend your time, is writing C source code. Now, once you write the C source code, it will get it goes through a tool called the compiler, and the compiler will compile your source code into a running file. In fact, if I click on run, notice when I clicked on run, when I do an ls, when I do ls, not only did I have a main.c, but now I have a main. And in fact, if I say file star, the star says show me the type of file for each one of these. And notice it says main. Wow, that's a lot of scary stuff there, but focus on executable. Turns out later in the course you'll know what all this means, but for right now just focus on this is your executable file. This is what runs. And this is the main.c is your source code. So what happens when you write C code? You begin with C source code. It runs through something called a compiler, and we'll talk more about the compiler later, but the compiler compiles your code and creates an executable file, and that's what you run. In fact, when I say /main, notice it executes that every time I run it. Now, let's demonstrate some things. Let's start at line 1, and notice, don't worry about what this means right now, but go ahead and just remove the hash mark. Okay, so I just removed that hash mark. Now when I click on run, notice we get an error. This is called a syntax error. A syntax error is an error that prevents you from getting your code to run. It prevents it from compiling. That is, the compiler tried to compile the code, it found an error, and it says, whoa, I've got an error. And believe me, you're going to spend a lot of time looking at errors as you write code, both when you begin and even in your career, you'll have errors all the time. So just get used to it. But it's no big deal, and here's why. It tells you the file name, where the error occurred. It also shows you the line number. So here we see line number 1. Well, yeah, we know it was line number 1. So it says there's an error at line number 1. The second number is the column. So line 1, column 1, there is an error. And it says unknown type name include. Well, don't worry about the details of what this means right now. We'll talk about types and so forth later. The more important thing is you have an error. And it actually has this little green caret. It points to where the error is at. So the most important thing here is to know when you have a red error, that's a syntax error. That means you're stopped. You did not finish compiling your code. And it tells you the exact line and column where it was at. So go ahead and put the hash mark back in there, right? The number sign or the hash mark. And now when we click on run, the syntax error is gone. All right, we got it gone. Now, let's do this, another skill. On line 1, if I put 2 forward slashes, so if I come over here and say 2 forward slashes, oops, so at the very beginning, 2 forward slashes. 2 forward slashes is called a comment. We've commented out the code. We can still see it as humans, we see it there, but the compiler, when it compiles our code, it ignores it. So in fact, if I click on run now, wow, notice what we've got. Instead of having an error, we have a warning. And this is something else you'll see as you go through and write code. You'll sometimes see a warning. Just like we saw an error, notice the warning tells you the file, so main.c. It tells you the line number, so line number 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It says right here, warning, implicitly declaring. Well, don't worry about that. We'll cover that later in the course. But it's basically saying something's not right. However, it's just a warning. And since it's just a warning, I'll continue to go ahead and build your code. And it went ahead and built and it ran. So it's important to note that a warning, unlike an error, a warning will still compile your code and run it. However, our goal is to always have no errors and no warnings. So I'll go back and remove the 2 forward slashes. And remember, the 2 forward slashes are a comment, make a one-line comment. When I remove that and click on run, we're now back to having the good code. Now, we can not only put single line comments, right? So I could comment out this line and comment out this line. And when I click on run, we don't see any output because I commented out both of these lines. So 2 forward slashes are a comment. I can also do /* and //, and that's called a block comment. Remember, comments are for us to see. The compiler ignores it. And so indeed, when I click on run, we see our comments have commented out this code using /* and //. So I have the whole thing commented out. So let me go back and put it how it was. So as a quick review here, we saw errors and warnings. We saw single line comments and multi-line comments. So thank you for making it this far. Step by step, we learn more and more skills. And of course, there'll be more to come in the next video. I'm Norman McIntyre. Thanks as always for watching.